This meeting is being recorded.
All right, so good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to our latest edition of our BDPA Tech and Career Talks. I am Devin Jenkins, our National Tech and Career Talk leader, Staff Technical Product Manager and Supply Chain Analytics at GE Healthcare, also the founder CEO of Share the Vibes, LLC, that connects people to music and technology. So joining you all today from Orlando, Florida at the Blacks in Technology Conference, where I'll be speaking later today, but also our VP of Operations is down here, who will be speaking on the panel on behalf of BDPA alongside, I believe the CEO of NSB is here, I want to say, for that panel and a few others. So down here at Blacks in Technology Conference, BitCon in Orlando, Florida, holding it down from afar, but still had to keep the show rolling with our tech talks so we can hear from our wonderful guest Thiah and our friends at Vanguard today. So just a quick intro and overview of BDPA and the tech talks for those who may be unfamiliar. BDPA, Black Data Processing Associates, were founded in 1975, kind of serves two main purposes. One is continuing to build computer programming skills in the tech talent pipeline of our youth, especially at the middle and high school level. That transcends on through the collegiate level. And then as professionals, we're an organization that allows for further development, networking, and continuing to make sure we're advancing in our IT careers. And our whole mantra is advancing careers from the classroom to the boardroom. So glad to have you here today. Our Tech and Career Talks take place on the second and fourth Friday of each month from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. Eastern time. I guess I'll be acclimated to that now. I usually have to knock an hour back when I do these, but 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 a.m. p.m. Eastern time. We have a range of topics, a range of speakers from all over, speaking on a wealth of things. We've had everything from entrepreneurship to brain-machine interaction. So we cover it all here at BDPA. We are excited today to have Thiah Muhammad joining us, talking about raising Black millionaires. And I won't steal the thunder. Today's call is hosted by our friends at Vanguard Consulting Group. If you've been around, you've heard them a few times this year. So we have our friends Akil Bektimba and then Amar Tennessee. Is it Tennessee or Tennessee?
Tennessee, just like the state.
All right, had to make sure. So we have our friends Akil and Amar here from Vanguard Consulting Group out of Atlanta, who are hosting this call. And if I remember correctly, they'll be hosting our next one as well. So got some great talks from Vanguard coming up. So I'll turn the floor over to Akil, who will lead us through the rest of our journey today.
Right on. Thank you so much, Devin. It's a pleasure being here with BDPA as always. Thank you for allowing us to be part of the platform. Today, we are very, very excited. We met Thiah Muhammad a couple months back, came across our page, came across a contact. We had a really incredible first meeting and connected on a lot of topics. But today we want to make sure that we are paying attention and looking forward to talking about raising Black millionaires, which is Thiah's organization. Thiah, I want to give you a moment to, well, before I do that, let me just say hello to my team. We have Amara Tennessee and Ariel Brown from the Vanguard Consulting Group LLC team. They're going to be helping out and make sure that we fill your questions and all that good stuff in the chat. So as we go through this, please throw those questions into the chat box and Amara will be managing that. But Thiah, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so very much, BDPA and Vanguard Consulting Group, for having me. I'm always honored and feel full of gratitude to be with my people talking about something, not talking about foolishness. So great. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Right on. So let's jump back in. Let's jump right into raising Black millionaires. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, the organization, how it came about? Tell us a little bit about your story, and then we have some more questions for you.
Yes, sir. No problem. I'm happy to. So I am Thiah Veona Muhammad, the founder of Raising Black Millionaires. Raising Black Millionaires is a media company that produces infotainment products specifically geared towards helping parents and educators of Black children to raise their children to be wealth creators and wealth maintainers, period. We or we started off not as that, not even remotely. We started off with a book that was developed from a series of interviews that I did of 5 millionaires, and one who I'm sure by now he is that, but he was very clear, or clearly on the path to becoming that. And just finding out what were the child rearing strategies and techniques their parents used to get them there, and then which of those same techniques they use in rearing their children to continue their legacies, right? Because most of us have no idea how to build wealth. We oftentimes think that, you know, we can live a good life if we are a doctor or a lawyer. And nowadays, you know, you hear more about engineers and people involved in tech. So, but back when I was coming up, you're with me, Akil, like we always heard it was either doctor, lawyer, engineer. Mm-hmm. That's it. Like those are the only career options in the universe, right? And so when I became a full-fledged adult and I had this leaning towards entrepreneurship that just kind of hit me by surprise. I didn't know what to do. You know, I struggled as an entrepreneur for a very, very, Lord have mercy, very long time, right? And so, but my focus was always on figuring it out and building wealth so that my children's journey wouldn't be as difficult. Let me make sure I explain what that means. I love entrepreneurship. I love everything about it. I love the grit of it. I love the struggles of it. I get tired of struggles, and I'm glad to not be in phases that I've come out of in the past. But the process of creating something from nothing and then seeing it flourish, it's a beautiful process. And more than anything, it taught me the significance of faith, and it taught me the significance of self-improvement. That's all from entrepreneurship, right? The entrepreneurial journey. I wanted my children to be able to discover what their natural gifts and talents were and base their lives around that, not deciding a career path just so that they can survive. Because when I experienced what that was like, to just get up and do what you wanted to do based off of your passion, based off of your skill, and enjoy the journey, that's something that you can't go back to just surviving after that. And I wanted to make sure that they got that, and that was their lifelong experience. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the things that's interesting, and I bought the books and have begun reading them. I won't pretend like I read the whole thing, but what I did notice amongst your 5 plus 1 who is now a millionaire, your subjects, and then you mentioned a little bit, you know, there was kind of and wherever it came from, we were, you know, kind of directed. These are the only ways that you reach high income, you reach high, you know, and potential millionaire status until we started delving into the entrepreneurship lane. But I think one thing that was interesting is that each one of those 5 people came from different fields, didn't they? They like started in different places. Can you talk a little bit about how they, you know, how you connected with each one of them, and how you know, how that became kind of the catalyst for, you know, spreading this information?
Yes, sir. So one of the things that I learned through that first set of 6 interviews was how vastly diverse the methods are. Okay. So as many different types of Black people there are throughout the globe, there are as many different paths towards wealth building. And there are some, key foundational things that are, that are always in place. Of course, this is what I have been learning, but not everyone parents the same, right? Not everybody's socioeconomic experience is the same. Mm-hmm. And so to answer your first question about how I connected with these individuals, I was able to connect with them because, our people are so super phenomenal that we have resources that many of us don't know about. I went to the Power Networking Conference, which is one of the things I take the time in Volume 1 of Parenting Secrets of Black Millionaires to explain and describe. I went to the Power Networking Conference. If you don't know about the Power Networking Conference, I encourage you as an entrepreneur or somebody who's interested in maybe delving into entrepreneurship, I encourage you to look into the Power Networking Conference and attend. But it is a conference that was founded, I want to say 30 or so years ago by Dr. George C. Fraser. And in that conference, he had such major hitters from various different industries. Mm-hmm. But it was like the experience of being in that space where every direction you turned, there was a Black millionaire. Not an entertainer, not an athlete. There were none there. They were all businessmen and women. And so that messed me up because unless you read publications like Black Enterprise, you're not really familiar with that world of Black millionaire, billionaire, entrepreneurs, businessmen and women. You just don't, unless you are from a family that is one of those, right? Mm-hmm. And so since the vast majority of our people don't come from that and don't have Black Enterprise subscriptions, may not even know, which is unbelievable in 2022, but they may not even know about the publication Black Enterprise in the first place, unless you're in those categories, and you're just completely oblivious. It's one of those things you just don't know what you don't know. Right. And so when I went to that conference, and that's where the idea to start interviewing them, because I'm looking at young people. I'm looking at young people, old people, not old people. We don't get old. Older people, right? Right. It just gets finer, right?
That's right.
But
that's right.
Looking at all of these people, but so many young people who were much younger than me. Now I'm a grandmother of two, and I'm like looking at who I would describe as a child, and he's looking like money is oozing out of his pores. She's looking like, you know what I mean? And then when you have a conversation with these people, they're having high level conversations. They're not talking about the Real Housewives of Atlanta. That's not what they're talking about, right? And so it made me to wonder, what is it that they were exposed to in their, what kind of conversations did they have in their families that I didn't have in mine? And I come from a beautiful family, full of love, right? Solid structure, right? But we didn't know anything about wealth building. And I wanted to know what it was that I didn't know so that I can make sure that I gave it to my children. And
without giving too much, because I think people definitely should go and go to the website, which we'll put up for sure. Mara will definitely put that up and going and looking into the book. But what are a couple of those things that they said to you that they learned or that, was the dinner conversation or the, after school conversation that sparked their interest young to get into, those higher level conversations and that direction. What were a couple of those things?
So again, a lot of them were different, but there were those key things that were commonalities. And I can tell you, Brother Akil, one of the biggest ones was that their parents were very intentional about the imagery that they put before their children. That was the big thing. Whether it was what they saw on television, what types of pictures they had in their home, what kinds of people they brought their children very intentionally around, right? They were very strategic. Conversations around money or just around who they were as individuals to build their self-esteem and build their confidence. Because if they were self-confident and they were in love with their image, so if they were in love with Black people in general and had a positive outlook of Black people versus the negative imagery we've always been given, then there's no limit to what you see yourself as being capable of doing. The other thing that was a very solid commonality was they introduced their children to entrepreneurship way early. When I say way early, I'm saying
lemonade stands.
Huh?
I said lemonade stands and
bro. And listen, not even just Brother Q, not even just lemonade stands. I'm saying like you just learned how to tie your shoes, right? Right? You just learned how to add 2 + 2, right? You're that young. And then here's a great example. I interviewed for the show. We'll talk about the show later. Okay. But for the show, I interviewed the Bronner brothers.
Okay. And
the Bronner brothers are the ones who bring us the Bronner Brothers hair show every year.
Oh yeah.
Right? Actually have
famous.
Yeah. And so, but in case you don't know, Bronner Brothers has before they even started the show, they had hair care products, right? So a lot of the oils and hair creams that many of us were brought up on using, right? It's their brand that's behind it, and it was founded by their father. I want to say in 1965. I may have that wrong, but if you check out the Raising Black Millionaires show, and that episode, we did a few episodes with them because there are 6 brothers, 5 still living. And their father passed their business down to them just before he passed. But one of the things that he made sure all of the boys did was have a paper route.
Yes.
A paper route.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, a paper route? They're looking at me like, a paper route. And I'm saying these are young men. And they would have to do their paper route from 6 a.m. until, was it 6? It may have been 5. It was like 2 hours before school started every day.
Oh, but that doesn't count the time that it took to wrap the papers, put the rubber bands on them, put them in the pouch. Yeah, I know that. I remember that.
You understand. And so he taught them so many lessons about time management, about grit, because it was difficult because they had to do these things on their own. If they had questions, they would come to their dad, ask him questions, but they had to he gave them the space to figure it out as children. We're not talking about teenagers. We're talking about children. So those are 2. If I don't want to keep going on and on.
No, those are fantastic. Yeah. I think that it's important to get the folks in the audience connected to that, and I know that I'm one of probably many that experience that rain, sleet, snow
Yes.
on the bike with,
Yes.
you know, at 11, 12 years old with that thing on my back, trying to get around the neighborhood was an interesting experience, but that grit is important. So I think that that's great. Let's talk a little bit about, you know, we've kind of all been saturated with kind of the terminology generational wealth. And I think that one of the things that I find interesting in this topic and with the work you do is that, you know, we always think about generational wealth, us as passing on generational wealth to our kids and younger generation. What's interesting to me about the Raising Black Millionaires is that you are sharing and promoting the idea that generational wealth starts with the kids and making sure that they receive the foundations. Tell me what kind of generational wealth means to you, and you know, how you, in general with the Black community, what does that mean as far as it relates to the work you do? I know, I think we want to keep that focus on these kids, and it's not just the little kids, but it's you know, all the way up. You know, there are people younger than us, so anybody younger than us should get the game on it. So just a couple of comments or thoughts on generational wealth as a topic.
Yeah.
And as a
I think if we could simplify it, just the acquisition and the maintenance and pass on ability or transference from generation to generation, where everybody doesn't have to start from scratch.
Mm.
Like it's fundamentally that. So when we started years ago, after publishing the first book, we started the blog. And I remember reading some comments where somebody said, when I was shocked that they even took the time to read the article. Mm-hmm. But one of the things they said was, well, I had to figure it out. So yes. my children, they need to figure it out too. Mm-hmm. Why give them the game? What do you mean, why give them the game? That's part of your parental responsibility.
Yes.
Like, as parents, my responsibility is to give guidance to my children. That's my job. Right. It's not one of those things like, you know, do you want Coke or Pepsi? It's not that. It's right. Like, eat water, drink the water, Thiah, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a fundamental thing. And so when you get it, why would you want your children to be caught up in struggle and survivorship mm-hmm. when you could help them like other cultures do?
Yeah.
To live well and be affluent and experience life. I think it's for me, it's that simple.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we miss it. I think the other thing is, I don't think we can avoid the age thing. Mm-hmm. Many of these families, because I've been blessed to talk to a few families, mm-hmm. right? Not just individuals who were first generational wealth builders, right? But I've talked with them, and they all have, the majority of them, introduced or were introduced to fundamental concepts surrounding money as children. Mm-hmm. One time I read a comment on the blog where a young lady, I don't know how young she was, but she was a lady who said, you should just let kids be kids. Well, children know whatever we expose them to, period. That's right? And so what's the harm in teaching them concepts that are going to make managing life and their finances way easier when they become 18? Absolutely. When I went to college, the bank messed around and gave me a checkbook.
Come on, man. And a credit card.
No, listen, I didn't get the card until way later, only because my aunt told me don't get in debt. She didn't tell me anything else. She said don't get student loans and don't get in debt. She didn't tell me how to do any of that.
Right.
So I didn't get credit cards, but the bank gave me a checkbook, bro. So they gave me a checkbook, and I'm thinking, okay, no problem. This is good.
Mm-hmm.
Bell South sent me a bill for $80, right?
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. I have checks to pay that bill. I wrote the check.
All proud.
Sent the bill in, put the stamp on it, because I always saw my daddy come fill out his bills and put them in the envelopes, put the stamp on it, put it in the mailbox, and pay his bills, right? Well, a few weeks later, I got a nice little notice in the mail. It was one of those perforated notices, right? And then I peeled it off, and I'm like, what is this? This is a very peculiar piece of parcel. And I opened it up, and then it says, insufficient funds, your account is in the negative. I'm like, what are you talking about? So I called the bank. Brother Kill, I called the bank because they're the ones who sent me the notice.
Right.
I say it was Boatman's Bank at the time. And I called Boatman's Bank and I said, yes, ma'am. How are you this afternoon? She says, I'm fine. Good. Listen, I got this notice and it says I had insufficient funds. I'm not really sure what you mean by that. She said, yeah, your check bounced. Okay, well, what does that mean? Right. She said, well, you wrote a check for $80 and the money was in your account. Well, what you mean? Y'all gave me the check. I used the check. I was told the checks could be used for paying bills. You have the money, Miss Muhammad. You gotta have the money in the account to cover the check. I had no clue.
Yeah, that's the reason.
I had no clue. So now that I know that, why would I allow my children
That's right.
to get to 18 and not understand? You have to have the money in the account. Why would I put my children through that?
Yeah.
So
that makes great sense, and I think that's a key takeaway for all of us. As we grow, and I think that I would even expand that, kind of just basic knowledge, and even maybe even deeper than that with everybody. We work with, we definitely want to make sure that our kids are getting it, but everybody, our neighbors' kids, are, the teenagers, the young adults, 20-some-year-olds, because it's surprising that they, a lot of them are still, we still got to get that information to them, and some of that basic stuff just did not get to. And I think the other takeaway that I felt really interesting that I heard from you that was really interesting is that we have kind of culturally a sense about us, and I don't know if it's generational, but that you need to work as hard as I worked. You need to learn the lessons that I learned and all this kind of stuff. And I rail against that as well, because I feel like, why, for what? The best thing we can do is so that they don't start from scratch, as you mentioned. And, and even if, and I think that's at varying levels, some of us got into this, got in the game or got, a little wiser about financial literacy later. Shit, I might only did it 10 years ago, but I think that wherever you start, if you start to apply the things that you're talking about, and then also passing what at that point to your kids, you may not pass them $1 million, but you might pass them, no debt after they get out of college, or you might be able to pass them, a small amount of money. But I think that's the point of making sure that they are, not starting from scratch. I want you to talk a little bit about the Raising Millionaires show. Give us a little taste of what's going on with the show.
I don't know if you're ready for that. I just don't know. I'm looking at you, and I just don't know if you're ready for this.
I think everybody put your hands up if you're ready for the Black Millionaires show. I think we're ready.
Can I mention?
I see you, William. Go ahead.
Can I mention one thing based off of what you just said, though?
Absolutely.
one of the things that when I interviewed George Fraser, he mentioned how, you know, all of us as parents want to give our children better, right? But somewhere along the line, we mixed up thinking that, or got mixed up thinking that better meant easier. And the two are not the same. And so when I talked with Keith Weiss said, he said that one of the things that he felt that he and his wife had failed at with his children was giving them the easier. And so that when they were older, and I'm saying teenage wise, they lacked the appreciation and the understanding of the value of a dollar. And so I'm saying all that to say that many of the other millionaires that I've interviewed, like the Bronner brothers, or like Michael Russell from H.R. Russell and Company, H.J. Russell and Company, they talked about how their parents required them to work as children in their company. They required them to work from early age. So when you start a paper route at the age of 6, at the age of 8, then you don't take things for granted. You have a solid base and understanding of the value of a dollar and what work produces. So there's a difference from passing that wealth on to children who have that basic understanding and then just handing them over to a brat. Totally different experiences. Right. Totally different. So I just wanted to make sure we emphasize that.
I'm glad.
And with the Raising Black Millionaires show, we get into things like that. The Raising Black Millionaires show is truly a love child of mine because we go into the home.
Recorded.
Yeah. Am I still with you?
Oh, you're back. I hear you.
Thank you.
There you go.
We go into the homes and offices of Black millionaire and billionaire businessmen and women. And again, if you're looking for entertainers, if you're looking for athletes, this is not the brand for you to follow. We are focused on businessmen and women who are excelling in various different industries. And when I say excelling, I mean they are changing the game, right? But we go into the homes and offices of these millionaires and billionaires to find out those strategies that they experienced and that their parents used in rearing them. And then one of the most interesting things is hearing the conversations with them about which of those things that their parents did that they realized in their journeys were not the best for them, right? Did not contribute to their mindsets and their practices and habits in wealth building, and what changes they made in rearing their children to fill in the gaps, right? These were phenomenal conversations. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to give the audience the visualization of their environments, their luxuries that they experience in their day-to-day lives, to hopefully captivate them. You know how we used to do with Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous and just be in awe, or MTV Cribs and just oh man, I wish I could have that, right? But giving the audience that in hopes of hooking the audience to just take one or two of the tips that the millionaires and billionaires share and apply that to your parenting or your engagement with young people.
That's fantastic. So where will people be able to see that? When is that? When is it coming forward? Are we still filming, or are we ready to? You got it. You're gonna spring it on us when?
Well, listen. You can go to YouTube right now and go to the Raising Black Millionaires show, and you can check out season 1.
Excellent.
And we, share the information with a friend. You won't be disappointed. I'm constantly left in awe, because every time I do an interview, I think it cannot get better than that interview. Every single time. And then the next one gets better and better. So yes, you can go there and check out season 1. And we're in the process of lining things up for season 2. We're in the process of checking into some international television networks to get the show sold to some international markets, so that we can even branch into some other markets. But yeah,
that's beautiful. I think I did have a question for you around kind of related to some of the things that we do, and in our first meeting, and we told you a little bit about Vanguard. We talked about the apprenticeship work, the expanding registered apprenticeship work. Do you see a blend between kind of the financial management side and apprenticeship? Do you see that as a potential merge, or where we can maybe braid some of those things together? Or are there apprenticeship or apprenticeable type of jobs that we can connect with in this space? I just wonder if that would mean financial institutions, if that means CPA firms, if that means anything that or do you see it maybe better separate?
What for? Are you saying in general or specifically?
Yeah, like if we were to develop an apprenticeship program around some of the connection to some of the wealth management or wealth generating areas.
Yeah, I absolutely do, because I think the thing is, Akil, there's so much that we don't know as a large body of people.
Right.
And so the beautiful thing about apprenticeships is it's an educational work environment.
Right.
Right. And those apprentices can use that information, those skills that they learn, and whether they continue on in career paths along the lines of the apprenticeship or not, these are skills that they will always have. And that's what it's about. It's about exposing our people to the skills that will help them, that they can leverage to have fuller and complete life experiences. And any way that can be done, I absolutely think that would be a great contribution. Truly.
That's excellent. Yeah, and it's like you said, it's on the job training. It's actively putting into action the lessons being learned in real environments, solving real problems, and moving real progress and production forward in some of these areas. So I think that I agree with you. I think that there's some thought and some room around that we can develop further. So I think that's fantastic. You guys are global as well as domestic. I know we talked a little bit about your intended reach and some of your present reach outside of the United States. And I wanted to give you a chance to kind of talk a little bit about what you're doing, domestically and also globally.
Yeah, we just came back from a conference in Miami, like just a couple of days ago, that is centered around matching and exposing U.S. companies with that specific one was with Caribbean nations, right? to do business with companies and government sectors within the various Caribbean nations. And just FYI, because I'm among my people and we need to know this. We oftentimes will create goods and services here in the US because this is where we live. And we look at the US market as the market, right? And we identify our avatar, right? Our ideal client. And then we hone down and find where that specific customer or potential customer is within the four walls of the US, right? But one of the things that just kind of floored me when Melissa Muhammad, who is the founder of Black and Global Business Network, when she told me that we are fighting for a piece of the US marketplace when 95% of the money is international.
Wow.
So when we understand that Black people and people, period, George Fraser talked about the significance of buying Black, but selling to everyone. Now, for a brand like mine that is specifically in service for Black people, everybody can get value and utility out we produce, every single body, because the principles are universal. But for a brand like mine, we chose to focus on Black people. But for anybody else who has any type of entrepreneurial interests, just expand your minds and your thinking into understanding that there's a whole world available to you. And when going through that process of talking with different representatives from U.S. embassies in Barbados and the Bahamas and the DR and Trinidad and Tobago and all of these different places, Suriname, like talking to these representatives, it was striking to me because some of these places I've never been. And it was dumbfounding. If I could impress upon you how floored I was to really be reminded, because I've been told this before, but really to be reminded of just how much self-hatred among Black people is all across the globe. All across the globe.
Wow.
That means for our brothers and sisters in Suriname, or our brothers and sisters in Guyana and the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic does not even consider themselves a Caribbean nation. They consider themselves more a part of Latin, Central America. No problem. That's great. That's geographical, no problem. I sat down and I talked to the representative there. And no, I talked to the representative and he told me, he said, well, your show trailer is great. Can you get it in Spanish? Yeah, sure. We're in the process of doing that now. He said, well, no. And I said, do you want subtitles or do you want a voiceover? He said, voiceover, because they're not the most literate nation. Okay, no problem. Then he says, make sure that it's a Dominican doing the voiceover, because there's a difference in dialect.
Dialect, right.
I went and I did some research and I reached out to a couple of different people to possibly do the voiceover. I found this young lady. She would be described as a white Dominican, right? And she says to me, is there a different translation? Is there a different name for the show? The show is the Raising Black Millionaires. And she types to me in Spanish what that would be. And I can't remember because I don't speak Spanish yet. But she said, but basically it was something millionaire negro. Okay. Okay, no problem. All right. Then she says, well, negro means black. I know. Then she says, Dominicans don't like being referred to as black. Then she says, as the Dominican Republic is very racist. She says, as a matter of fact, black people tend to marry white to clean the blood.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was heavy.
So then I talked to, I know we only have a few minutes, but I really want to impress this upon us. I talked to someone in Guyana, and he explains to me that the Indo-Guyanese make up 30% of the population. 20% of the population. 80% of the population is made up of Afro-Guyanese. So if you just picture somebody from India who many times their skin can be darker than mine and yours,
of course,
right? And then you picture somebody who's Afro-Guyanese. Okay, they might look like us. They might look like somebody from the deep Sahara. No problem, right? They're black people, right? He says the government, the majority of the population is Afro-Guyanese, but the government is run by Indo-Guyanese. He says that if they brought themselves, I said, let me ask you this. He said they don't like being black. Like they don't do that, right? Okay, no problem. He said they actually will call themselves white. They'll look just like you and me, and they'll call themselves white. I said, you got to be lying to me. Then he says, he says if they came to the US, they would easily be considered a black man or woman.
Sure.
So I'm impressing upon you that when I learned that it made it clear that when we made the Raising Black Millionaires flashcards to help our children to see black people who look like they can be their mama, their big mama, their cousin, their father, their aunt, sister, brother, when we made those flashcards to help our children to see themselves in all of the limitless prominence and excellence they could achieve, I realized in that moment that there's a need for this everywhere. So I just wanted to, I know I took up some time, Brother Keel, but I
think that, you know, everything that we do has something to do with developing pride in ourselves and our people. And I think that the point about not limiting ourselves to to just the domestic market, I think is huge. So I think, you know, you guys, you know, you're starting the expansion into the Caribbean. I think that's key. I know that we talked a little bit about the continent, you know, and doing, you know, getting some connection to the continent and just the whole kind of Black diaspora, I think needs your message and you know, the information. So that I think that's perfect. I appreciate the tangent. I like when you go off. So so do your thing. There are a couple of questions I did see. One from Anamara. I'm just gonna say it. Sorry.
No problem.
We're waiting for you. It says from Robert Tubbs. It says, "What is considered a game changer millionaire?"
A game changer millionaire?
Robert, if you're on, you can clarify your question or expand on it.
Sure. I thought I had heard. Good afternoon, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. And thank you to the team at Vanguard for hosting. My name is Robert Tubbs. I'm locally in Atlanta. I thought during the conversation you had mentioned it was part of, you're saying if you're meeting somebody, it is not that athlete, it's not that rapper, it is a game changer millionaire. So somebody that's not one of those. I thought that's what I heard. So I'm curious to know how you place or categorize or put them in a different bucket. What's considered a game changer millionaire?
Thanks,
yeah,
Rob.
thank you for asking that like that so that I could clarify. I think the point I was just trying to emphasize is that we focus on businessmen and women, not that they are necessarily game changer millionaires, but to open up the minds of our people to the understanding that you don't have to be an entertainer or an athlete to achieve great wealth. A lot of times, unless they have some hand in the way their careers are navigated and the structure of their compensation, in which is most of the times it's not the case. That's what makes LeBron and some of these very conscientious athletes so beautifully valuable. But that's what I was trying to convey.
Okay, then I would love to put myself in that category of game changer, because like Akil, starting off with that paper route, that's where I first learned how to save.
Mm-hmm.
Mother took, right, you're going to learn how to open a checking and savings account, age 14.
Yeah.
And I've been saving ever since. But it came down to, and I'm curious about your cards, the impact, because it comes back down to learning how to save, checking, knowing what your credit is, that there are 3 credit bureaus. Have you ever checked, how far does it go? Because the investments are property investment, passive income off of those investment properties, running a small business now for 12 years, plus holding a full-time job while investing in my own IRA, plus whatever it is at a 401k. I'm retiring in 3 to 5 years.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. But I think, Robert, to your point, and Thiah, I love that you go there, because I think that in our community, and I know the reason, kind of the catalyst for that is, in our communities, we only see, or generally see the athletes and the entertainers as, that those are the, pinnacle of our kind of wealth. But then you have, like Mr. Tubbs here, you got, Robert Smith, you got all of these people who have done, amazing things, that didn't pick up a ball, didn't swing a bat, but actually, that actually got into other fields and was able to generate and put their income to work and having their money work for them, which is, I think, the biggest thing. And the fact that you don't have to have $1 million to start out with, right? You see things all the time. If you got $500, if you got $300, if you got $100, you can start making that money move. But it's all about the education, and that's what Raising Black Millionaires is about. And I think that's fantastic. Before we move on and kind of get to our closing here, I wanted to, Mr. Wilson gave a story here. He related some of this conversation to his own background and his father. Mr. Wilson, he's one of the founders of BDPA, just so that you guys know who he is. But Mr. Wilson, you want to give a little foundation on that?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Just for clarification, I'm one of the founding members of the Cleveland chapter.
Cleveland chapter, that's right.
Back in 1980, I did have the pleasure of working with Mr. Norman Mays and the late Earl Pace in writing the BDPA story.
That's right.
And I mentioned the BDPA story book because I talk about my father, whose passion was art. And I mentioned this in the comments section. However, as my father put it, well, he worked as a hoisting machine operator to support our family, like many of us do what we have to do to pay the bills.
Mm-hmm.
However, my father ran a sign painting business in the basement of our home since before I was born.
Wow.
And as he put it, he labored for pay by day and labored for love by night, doing what he really wanted to do. And on Saturdays and evenings, when I came home from school, I helped my father hang signs at 10 different Baptist and AME churches and several Black-owned businesses on the east side of Cleveland. And I mention this because the genesis of me launching a $10 million IT services business was my father's inspiration that I received since childhood. So my one plug is please buy the BDPA story on Amazon if you haven't already read it. Especially read the section of Earl Pace's parting remarks that he shares with us at the end of the book if you haven't already read that. So again, I want to thank our speaker and our sponsor for this excellent presentation. That's what I wanted to share. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you. So Thiah, we got to wrap up here pretty quickly. I see Devin jumping back on. So I wanted to just as we close, any kind of final words and also what's next kind of immediately. We got the Raising Black Millionaires show, season 1, season 2 in production. We got the books, we got the flashcards, your speaking engagements and the conferences that you attend that you shared some of the information with us. What's coming up next in the kind of next 60, 90 days?
Well, the next 60, 90 days, we are working on another volume of the flashcards and trying to pinpoint when we're going to release volume 2. Volume 2 is the continent edition, where we highlight specifically Black millionaires and billionaires on the continent of Africa, right? Mm-hmm. Exclusively, various different countries. So we look forward to constantly providing more and more volumes for the flashcards because there are so many of our people doing brilliant things. The long term, one of the things we are working on is a robust course. Some of these things, a lot of these things, we don't have to get, and we often enroll in universities thinking that we're going to get, and we don't get. I know countless people who enrolled in business. They didn't know the first thing of how to start a business and run a business effectively once they graduated. So we're working on a robust course to develop the individual and really fill out the gaps of some of the things that I know that myself and many entrepreneurs could have used if we had just had some foundational knowledge in our development as entrepreneurs. So that's one of the biggest things we're looking for. Next, other than that, we look forward to having a Raising Black Millionaires show in various different parts of the globe. So we'll have the flagship show here in the US, but I look forward to going to a non-English speaking country, finding a host who is from the culture, and making it happen.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today, for telling us your story and how we can be impactful in the way that you have framed it for us. Some of the wisdom and the kind of active lessons that we can put into place right now. Very much appreciate it. I look forward to our next conversation and not only building and raising Black millionaires, but some of the other work that we can do to collaborate and support each other's efforts. I want to real quick give a couple shouts, Devin, if you don't mind, about some upcoming things that we have going on with Vanguard, and then hand it on over to you to close us out. Cool? All right. So reminder for everyone that October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. We only have a couple more days of that. So if there are any activities or anything going on towards the end that you can jump in on, please do. It's a very important piece of workforce development or piece around workforce development that all of us, no matter your age, race, disability affects every genre, every demographic. And so, let's make sure that we are kind of helping and supporting that effort. To that effect, Vanguard Consulting Group and Net America, our partner, will be hosting a workforce development and disability and diversity inclusion event. That was a mouthful. But we will be hosting that on November 29th on 2022 from 1 to 4 Eastern. We will make sure that that is promoted and you guys will see it via LinkedIn, via website, via everything that we can get it out on. And our keynote speaker is amazing. If you don't know her, her name is Yvette Pegues. I want to make sure she has a Dominican last name, so it's a little tougher for me to pronounce, but she's awesome. As a matter of fact, I think Amara can put her website also in the chat. And so we look forward to her keynoting that event. We'll have some discussions and everything else. Net America and Workforce Impact Network will also have some events coming up for National Apprenticeship Week, November 14th through the 20th. And so keep looking out for that. And you can visit some of the web pages, obviously related to the work we do and the work that we're doing with other folks in the chat. And you'll see it coming through your mail. Thank you, BDPA. Thank you, Devin, for allowing us to host this conversation. Thank you, Thiah, to our fabulous guest here today. And Devin, it's all yours. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Akil. Thank you, Thiah. Thank you, Amara, Ariel, everyone from Vanguard who came and made this possible today. Hope you've enjoyed the conversation. I did drop the link in the chat. It's a few links up, but bdpa.org/tech in career talks. You'll be able to find the recording of this conversation as well as our previous talks on the site. So check that out. These will also be on YouTube. So it'll be accessible. And we will see you again. I believe it's November 11th is our next talk, which we'll have Vanguard back again with some Black women in tech. Have a few friends from T-Mobile joining us. So another great conversation coming up next month. So you all stay safe, stay blessed, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.